What's the craziest thing you've done in the name of love? My girlfriend forced me to join her church cult. I'd been resisting for months, but she said it was either the Church of Eternal Ascension or we were done. After 2 years together, I caved. The compound was an hour outside town. White buildings, too many security cameras, everyone wearing the same beige robes. Cassie had been getting more insistent lately, crying when I refused, saying I didn't love her enough to share her faith, threatening suicide if I didn't at least try one service. So here I was, walking into their prayer hall at 9 a.m. on a Sunday, already regretting everything. When her priest saw me, he stopped mid-sermon. 40 people turned to stare as he walked down the aisle toward me. His eyes went wide, then narrowed, studying my face like he was doing math in his head. "Didn't I see you as a little boy?" "I don't remember most of my childhood," I said, uncomfortable with everyone watching. Some were whispering now. Some traumatic things happened. Father Neville studied my face like he was seeing a ghost. "Adam? Adam Parmalee's son?" My stomach dropped. That was my father's name. No one had said it to me in 20 years. "Why don't you come to my office? I have some things to show you." My girlfriend Cassie squeezed my hand encouragingly. "Go ahead. Father Neville knows everything about everyone here. It's like he's psychic." The congregation was muttering excitedly as we left. I heard someone say, "the bloodline," and finally returned. His office was underground, no windows, walls covered in photos of congregation members spanning decades, hundreds of faces, some crossed out with red X's. He closed the door and I heard it lock automatically. Electronic. No handle on the inside. "You must have repressed memories," he said, pulling out a manila folder from a filing cabinet labeled 1995 to 2000. "Do you know what happened to your parents when you were 7? "No." My throat felt dry. "My aunt raised me, said they died in an accident overseas." He spread photographs across his desk. My parents, younger, wearing ceremonial robes with golden trim, standing at an altar, leading prayers. In one photo, my mother held a baby, me. Another showed them with dozens of followers all kneeling. "They used to be the leaders of this church," Father Neville said softly. "The founders, actually. They built everything you see here. Your father claimed to speak directly to the Eternal." My hands shook as I picked up a photo. My father's face, which I barely remembered, smiling as he baptized someone in a lake. My mother beside him, pregnant with what must have been me. "What happened to them?" "They moved on to a higher dimension." "What does that mean?" My voice was rising. "Where are they?" "They ascended, as was always the plan. November 18th, 1998, the Great Ascension." "Stop talking in riddles!" I slammed my fist on his desk. "What happened to my parents?" Father Neville walked to a cabinet, pulled out another file, thicker. Inside were newspaper clippings. "Mass suicide at religious compound. 67 dead. Photos of bodies covered in white sheets. FBI agents in hazmat suits. My parents' names in the list of deceased." "You gave them poison," I whispered, reading the articles. "Cyanide in communion wine. You killed them. I helped them transcend," he corrected calmly. "They volunteered. Begged for it, actually. You were supposed to ascend with them, but your aunt, a non-believer, had taken you for the weekend. Your name is on the original list. See?" He showed me a handwritten document. There it was. My name. Age 7. Ascending with parents. "Your aunt saved you by accident. We've been looking for you ever since." "You murdered my parents." I stood up, knocking the chair over. "I'm calling the police." "The police know. The case was closed. Religious freedom, voluntary participation. All 47 left signed documents, video testimonies, including your parents." He showed me their signatures on forms titled Consent to Ascension Ceremony. Then he pressed play on an old TV. My parents, alive, speaking to the camera about their joy in ascending. My mother holding me as a baby, saying I would ascend with them. "Your blood is special," Father Neville continued. "Your father could speak to the Eternal. That gift passes through bloodlines. We need you." "Now," Father Neville said, standing, "it's your time to replace your parents, to finish what they started, to ascend to the next dimension. Tonight's celestial alignment matches November 18th, 1998 exactly. It only happens every 26 years. You're insane if you think—" The door burst open. 2 security guards, massive men in those same beige robes, grabbed my arms. I tried to fight, but they were prepared, trained. One pressed something to my neck, a taser. My body went rigid, then limp. As they dragged me backward down the hallway, I saw Cassie standing by Father Neville's desk. He pulled out a stack of bills, $100 bills, and placed them in her hand. She counted them quickly, professionally. "Good work," he said. "He was harder to find than we expected." 3 years of dating that loser," she replied, pocketing the money. "You better make this worth it." "The bloodline must be completed," Father Neville said. "The last thing I saw before they pulled me into a basement room was a banner being hung. Welcome home, chosen son. I'm dragged down a narrow hallway, my legs barely working after the taser, and they throw me into a basement room with concrete walls and a single fluorescent light. The door slams shut with an electronic click, and when I try the handle, there's nothing on the inside, just smooth metal where a knob should be. My whole body aches from the taser, and my neck burns where they pressed it against my skin. I sit on the thin mattress in the corner and try to slow my breathing, but all I can think about is Cassie counting those $100 bills like I was a used car she just sold. The room is maybe 10 feet by 12 with a camera mounted in the corner near the ceiling, a small sink, a toilet with no seat, and a metal cart with medical supplies. There's a vent near the floor that's blowing cold air, and when I look closer, I notice one of the screws holding the grate is loose and stripped. About an hour later, Cassie comes to the door and talks through a small slot I didn't notice before. She says this is all because I never took her faith seriously, that Father is giving me the gift my parents wanted from me, and if I really loved her, I'd understand this is destiny. I tell her she's insane and that she sold me for cash, but she just says the money was compensation for her time and emotional labor. Her voice has this rehearsed quality, like she's been practicing these lines, and when I call her a traitor, she closes the slot without another word. A woman in scrubs comes in around late afternoon with a clipboard and a blood pressure cuff. She introduces herself as Kira, and says she needs to take my vitals and make sure I'm healthy for tonight's ceremony. Her voice professional, but her eyes avoiding mine. I ask Kira what they're planning to do to me, and she says they'll give me something to help me relax before the ascension ritual. When I grab her wrist and beg her to help me escape, she pulls away quickly and says the doors only open with key cards that track every use. Kira tells me someone checks on me every 2 hours, and that cameras monitor everything, so trying anything would be pointless. But when she's gathering her supplies, I notice her hands are shaking slightly, and she keeps glancing at the family photos Father showed me, which are visible through the open door. I try the door after she leaves and confirm it won't budge. Then I test the vent grate and find that the loose screw turns slightly when I push it. I use my fingernail to work it back and forth, making tiny progress while keeping an eye on the camera. Someone slides a tray of food through the slot around dinner time, some kind of soup and bread that tastes like cardboard. I eat it anyway because I need energy, and I notice they're watching through the slot to make sure I finish everything. I'm lying there trying to look calm when static crackles from somewhere above me, and Father Neville's voice fills the room through a speaker I hadn't noticed mounted in the corner. He's leading prayers, his tone smooth and practiced, talking about completion and bloodlines and sacred duty, like he's reading from a script he's memorized over decades. The congregation responds in unison to his prompts, their voices muffled but clear enough that I can hear maybe 40 or 50 people chanting along. He says my name 3 times during the sermon, calling me the chosen heir, and the bloodline fulfilled, and each time my stomach twists harder because I know they're all upstairs right now preparing for whatever they plan to do to me at 2 a.m. The prayers go on for maybe 20 minutes, building in intensity, and when they finally end with a loud collective amen, the silence that follows feels even worse than the noise. I push myself up from the mattress once I'm sure no one's watching through the slot and start examining every inch of this room, looking for anything that might help me get out, or at least defend myself. The medical cart catches my attention because it has wheels that squeak when I push it, which might be useful for making noise or blocking the door, though I'm not sure how yet. I pull open the top drawer and find bandages, medical tape, some gauze pads, and a few tongue depressors that are too flimsy to be weapons. The bottom shelf has a plastic bin filled with more supplies, including a small bottle of rubbing alcohol and some cotton swabs. I check the vent again, getting down on my hands and knees to really look at it, but even if I remove the entire grate, the opening is maybe 10 inches wide and 6 inches tall, way too small for me to fit through. Still, I work the loose screw back and forth until it comes free, and I slip it into my pocket along with the one I found earlier, thinking maybe I can use them to pick a lock or jam something if I get the chance. The hours drag by, and I'm pacing the room when I hear footsteps in the hallway around 8 o'clock. The electronic lock clicks, and Kira walks in carrying a small paper cup with 2 pills rattling around inside. She won't look directly at me as she holds out the cup and a bottle of water. She says 1 pill is for anxiety, and the other will help me sleep, and that I need to take them right now while she watches because it's important I'm calm for the ceremony. Her hands are steadier than they were earlier, but her voice has this tight quality like she's forcing herself to stay professional. I take the cup and she watches me closely, her eyes tracking my hand as I bring it to my mouth. I ask her what they're really planning to do to me, and she just repeats that I need to take the pills, that everything will be easier if I cooperate. I put both pills in my mouth and take a big drink of water, making sure she sees me swallow, but I'm holding the pills under my tongue the whole time. The taste is bitter and chalky, and I have to fight not to gag as I swallow the water around them. Kira watches me for what feels like a full minute, her eyes searching my face for any sign I'm faking, and I force myself to keep eye contact and breathe normally. Finally, she nods and makes a note on her clipboard, then turns to leave. The second the door locks behind her, I spit the pills into my hand and they're half dissolved now, leaving a gross residue in my mouth. I rinse with water from the sink and hide the soggy pills in the seam of the mattress where the fabric is torn, pushing them deep inside where no one will find them. My heart won't stop racing, and I can feel panic rising in my chest, making it hard to breathe. But I know I have to keep it together. I force myself to lie down on the mattress and close my eyes, trying to look like someone who just took sedatives and is getting drowsy. Through the camera mounted in the corner, they need to see me calming down, getting sleepy, becoming compliant like they planned. I practice breathing slowly and deeply, counting to 4 on each inhale and exhale, letting my muscles go loose one by one. My body wants to stay tense and ready to fight, but I make myself go limp, letting my arms flop at my sides and my head loll to one side like I'm drifting off. Every few minutes, I remind myself to stay still, to keep my breathing even, to look like the drugs are working exactly as they're supposed to. About 30 minutes pass and I hear footsteps approaching, then voices in the hallway right outside my door. Someone says the alignment is at 2 in the morning and they need to make sure everything is ready by then. Another voice, deeper and male, responds that they need to prepare the ceremonial space and make sure the bloodline heir is in the right state of mind. They're talking about me like I'm an object, a piece of equipment they need to set up for some ritual, and I have to clench my jaw to keep from reacting. One of them mentions that Father Neville wants the traditional robes brought down from storage and the altar cleaned before midnight. The other agrees and says they should check on me one more time to confirm the sedation is working properly. I keep my eyes closed and force my breathing to stay slow and steady when I hear the slot in the door slide open. Someone's watching me and I can feel their eyes on my face, studying me for any sign of consciousness. I let my mouth fall open slightly and make my chest rise and fall in the deep, regular pattern of someone who's heavily sedated. They watch for what feels like forever, maybe 2 full minutes, and I have to fight the urge to peek through my eyelashes to see who it is. Finally, I hear them tell someone else that the sedation is working perfectly, and I should be fully compliant by midnight, ready for transport to the ceremonial chamber. The slot closes with a soft click, and their footsteps fade down the hallway. Once I'm sure they're gone, I sit up and try to think through my options with a clearer head now that the immediate panic has passed. The door needs a key card to open and I don't have one, plus the electronic lock probably logs every use so they'd know someone accessed this room. The vent is too small to crawl through even if I manage to remove the entire grate, and I already checked that the screws are stripped and barely holding. The camera watches everything I do, recording every movement, so any escape attempt would be caught on video immediately. They're checking on me regularly, maybe every 30 minutes or hour, and they think I'm drugged, which gives me some advantage, but only until they realize I'm not. I have maybe a few hours before they come to get me for this ceremony, and once they figure out I'm still alert and fighting, they'll probably force the drugs on me or just taser me again like they did upstairs. I stand up slowly and notice a clipboard hanging on the wall near the door that I couldn't see from the mattress because the angle was wrong. When I climb onto the edge of the bed frame and lean out as far as I can without falling, I can just barely read the printed text. It's a schedule, formatted like a hospital chart, with times and procedures listed in neat columns. My name is at the top, spelled out in full, and underneath it says 2 a.m., Celestial Alignment Ceremony, Bloodline Completion. Below that are preparation steps listed by time, including 11 p.m., Final Sedation Check, and 1:30 a.m., Transport to Ceremonial Chamber, and 1:45 a.m., Ritual Cleansing and Robbing. The clinical language makes it sound like a medical procedure instead of whatever sick thing they're actually planning, and seeing it written out like that makes my stomach drop, because it means this is organized, planned, something they've done before or at least prepared for extensively. I step down from the bed frame and notice a red emergency pull cord hanging near the sink, the kind you see in the hospital bathrooms for patients who fall or need help. I test it gently, giving it a small tug to see what happens, but nothing responds at all. No alarm, no buzzer, no light flashing anywhere that I can see. I pull harder and still nothing happens, just the cord moving loosely in my hand like it's not connected to anything. It's completely fake, probably just there to make the room look like it meets some kind of safety code or building regulation, giving the appearance of concern for whoever they lock down here. I let the cord drop and it swings back and forth a few times before going still, and I add it to my mental list of things that won't help me get out of here. I climb back onto the mattress and arrange myself like I'm sleeping, keeping my breathing slow and even. The minutes drag by and I count them in my head, trying to stay calm even though my heart won't stop racing. Around 10 o'clock, I hear footsteps in the hallway again, and the electronic lock clicks open. I keep my eyes mostly shut, just barely open enough to see through my eyelashes as Kira walks in carrying her clipboard. She moves quietly across the room and sits on the edge of the mattress, reaching for my wrist to take my pulse. Her fingers are cold against my skin, and I force myself to stay completely limp, letting my arm hang loose in her grip. She counts silently for a full minute, then writes something on her clipboard with a pen that scratches against the paper. She checks my other wrist, then leans close to look at my face, studying my eyes like she's trying to see if I'm really asleep. I keep my breathing steady and slow, in and out, matching the rhythm of someone who's heavily drugged. She seems satisfied because she nods to herself and writes more notes, then stands up and walks toward the door. But she stops halfway there and turns back, looking at me for a long moment. Her mouth opens like she wants to say something, then closes again. She takes a step closer to the mattress, and I hear her whisper something so quiet I almost miss it. The words are just breath, barely audible. She says she's sorry. I don't move. Don't react. Don't even let my breathing change. She stands there for another few seconds, then reaches down and adjusts the thin blanket over my legs, tucking it in around my feet. When she straightens up and turns toward the door again, I catch a glimpse of her face through my eyelashes, and I see her wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. The door closes behind her with that same electronic click, and I'm alone again. I wait another hour, listening to the building sounds around me. Footsteps overhead, muffled voices, the hum of the fluorescent light. Around 11 o'clock, the lock clicks again, and a security guard walks in. The same one from earlier, I think, though it's hard to tell since they all wear those beige robes. He tells me to get up, bathroom time, and his voice is flat and professional, like he's done this 100 times before. I make myself move slowly, stumbling a little as I stand, letting my legs wobble like they barely work. He grabs my arm just above the elbow, his grip firm but not painful, and guides me toward the door. I shuffle along beside him, keeping my head down and my movements clumsy. We step into the hallway and I start counting immediately, keeping track of every detail. 3 doors on the left, all closed, no windows or markings to show what's behind them. 2 doors on the right, same thing, just blank metal with electronic card readers. The hallway is painted that same industrial beige as everything else, and the floor is concrete, worn smooth from years of foot traffic. The bathroom is at the end of the hall, maybe 40 feet from my room, and the guard keeps his hand on my arm the entire way there. He opens the door and tells me I have 2 minutes, then positions himself right outside where he can see the door. I step inside and close it most of the way, leaving it cracked like I'm too out of it to care about privacy. The bathroom is small and institutional, just a toilet, a sink, and a mirror with a crack running through one corner. I turn on the cold water and splash it on my face, letting the shock of it clear my head for a second. The window above the toilet catches my attention, and I step closer to examine it. It's small, maybe 12 inches square, and someone has painted it shut with thick white paint that's cracked and peeling around the edges. I can see bars on the outside, thick metal ones set into the concrete, spaced too close together for anyone to squeeze through even if they broke the glass. The guard knocks on the door and tells me to hurry up, his voice sharp with impatience. I dry my face on my sleeve since there's no towel and shuffle back to the door, letting him take my arm again. We walk back down the hallway and I count everything again in reverse, memorizing the layout. 3 doors on the right now, 2 on the left, 40 feet total, concrete floor, beige walls, electronic locks on every door. He guides me back into my room, and I lie down on the mattress without being told, curling onto my side and closing my eyes. The building settles around me, and I lie there listening to every sound. Footsteps overhead, regular and paced like someone walking back and forth. Occasional voices too muffled to make out words. The hum of the ventilation system pushing cold air through the vent near the floor. My hands won't stop shaking no matter how hard I try to control them. I keep seeing my parents' faces in those photographs Father Neville showed me, young and smiling as they led their followers. I wonder if they felt this same terror before they drank the poison, if they knew what was really happening, or if they truly believed they were ascending to some higher dimension. I wonder if they thought about me at all in those final moments, if they regretted putting my name on that list. The questions circle in my head, and I can't make them stop. Can't push away the image of those bodies covered in white sheets. Around midnight, the PA system crackles to life, and I hear Father Neville's voice echoing through the building. He's talking about sacred bloodlines and dimensional transcendence, his tone reverent and excited like he's announcing something wonderful. He says my name 3 times, each repetition louder and more emphatic, like he's calling me forward even though I'm locked in a basement room. I hear people upstairs responding in unison, their voices blending into some kind of chant that repeats over and over. The words are hard to make out, but I catch phrases about completion and destiny and the return of the chosen. My stomach turns, and I press my face into the thin mattress, trying to block out the sound. The chanting goes on for several minutes before Father Neville's voice cuts through again, saying something about preparation and readiness and the alignment approaching. Then the PA system clicks off, and the building goes quiet again except for footsteps and occasional murmurs. I push myself up and look at the vent again, that loose screw still visible in the grate. Maybe if I can unscrew more of it, I can create some kind of noise or distraction, something that will buy me time or throw them off their schedule. I stand on the edge of the mattress and reach up, my fingers finding the screw head and trying to turn it. But my hands are shaking too badly and my grip slips, my knuckles scraping hard against the rough concrete wall around the vent. The pain is sharp and immediate, a burning sensation that spreads across my knuckles as skin tears away. I bite down hard on my sleeve to keep from crying out, tasting fabric and feeling tears spring to my eyes. Blood wells up on my knuckles, not a lot but enough to sting, and I pull my hand back and cradle it against my chest. The screw didn't budge and now I've just hurt myself for nothing. I'm sitting on the mattress pressing my scraped knuckles against my shirt when I hear them coming. Multiple footsteps in the hallway, moving fast and low voices talking over each other. They're early. It's only 12:30 and the schedule said 2 a.m., but they're coming for me now and I'm out of time. My brain races through options and discards them just as fast. I can't fight. They'll just taser me again. I can't hide. There's nowhere to go. I can't talk my way out. They're not going to listen. Then an idea hits me. Desperate and probably stupid, but it's the only thing I can think of. I slide off the mattress onto the floor and start convulsing, thrashing my arms and legs and making choking sounds deep in my throat. I let my eyes roll back and my whole body go rigid, then loose, then rigid again, mimicking every seizure I've ever seen in movies or on TV. The door flies open so fast it bangs against the wall, and 3 people rush in at once. Kira is first, dropping to her knees beside me and reaching for my head to keep it from hitting the concrete. The security guard is right behind her, his keycard still dangling from his belt clip as he tries to grab my shoulders. The third person is a man in scrubs I haven't seen before, shouting something about checking my airway and getting medication ready. They're all focused on me, hands grabbing at my arms and legs, voices overlapping as they yell medical terms I don't understand. In the chaos, I manage to get my hand near the guard's belt, fingers closing around the plastic keycard and yanking it free. He doesn't notice, too busy trying to hold my legs still while Kira checks my pupils with a small flashlight. I let the keycard slide up into my palm and keep thrashing, making it look like random movement instead of theft. They finally get me back onto the mattress, Kira's hands firm on my shoulders as she tells me to breathe. Just breathe. I let my body go completely limp, all the fight draining out of me at once like I've exhausted myself. The man in scrubs is checking my pulse while the guard stands back, breathing hard from the effort of restraining me. Kira leans close and pulls my eyelids open one at a time, shining her flashlight directly into my pupils. I keep my eyes unfocused and vacant, staring through her instead of at her. She says something about dilation, and the man in scrubs argues back, saying we should give me more medication to prevent another episode. The guard says we should call Father Neville and let him decide, his voice uncertain. They go back and forth while I lie there motionless, the stolen keycard pressed hard against my palm under my leg, where none of them can see it. Once they're satisfied I'm not going to have another episode, they pack up their supplies and head for the door. The man in scrubs tells the guard to check on me every hour, and Kira nods but doesn't look back at me as they file out. The door clicks shut, and I hear their footsteps fade down the hallway. Then silence except for the hum of the fluorescent light and my own breathing. I count to 60 in my head, then do it again, forcing myself to wait even though every muscle in my body wants to move right now. 15 minutes feels like 15 hours, but I make myself stay still on the mattress, the keycard burning against my palm where it's hidden. When I finally slide off onto the floor, my legs are shaking so bad I have to crawl on my hands and knees toward the door. The concrete scrapes my skin through my clothes and the cold seeps into my bones, but I keep moving until I'm right up against the door frame. I press my ear to the metal and listen for any sound outside, holding my breath so I can hear better. Nothing. I pull the keycard out from under my leg and hold it up to the reader mounted on the wall. My hand is trembling so hard I almost drop it, and I have to use both hands to steady it enough to swipe it through the slot. The lock clicks so loud it might as well be a gunshot in the quiet hallway. I freeze completely, not even breathing, waiting for shouts or footsteps or alarms. But there's just that awful silence that makes my ears ring. The guard must have stepped away, maybe to help with whatever they're setting up for the ceremony, or maybe he's just taking a break because he thinks I'm drugged unconscious. I count to 30 again before I dare to push the door open an inch, then another inch, peering through the gap into the hallway beyond. Empty. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, and there are doors lining both sides of the corridor, but no people. No movement, nothing. I slip through the door and let it close behind me with another soft click that makes my heart jump into my throat. The first door on my left has a small window at eye level, and I peek through it before trying the handle. Storage room, shelves stacked with cleaning supplies and folded sheets and towels. I twist the handle and it opens easily. No lock, and I duck inside and close the door behind me. There's a maintenance jacket hanging on a hook by the door, dark blue with the compound's logo on the back, and I pull it on over my clothes even though it's too big and smells like bleach. Maybe if someone sees me from a distance, they'll think I'm supposed to be here, that I'm just doing my job instead of escaping. The second door I try is a bathroom with 2 stalls and a sink, and the third is locked tight with a keycard reader that my stolen card doesn't work on. The fourth door opens into a laundry room that's bigger than my entire apartment, with industrial washers and dryers lining the walls, and the smell of detergent so strong it makes my eyes water. There's a rolling cart in the corner piled high with dirty beige robes, the same ones everyone wears upstairs, and without thinking it through, I climb into the cart and pull the robes over myself. They're heavy and musty, and I can barely breathe under all the fabric, but I hear footsteps in the hallway getting closer, and I press myself flat against the bottom of the cart. Someone comes into the laundry room humming something under their breath, and I feel the cart start to move as they grab the handle and wheel it out into the corridor. We turn left, then right, then left again, and I try to keep track of the directions, but I lose count after the fourth turn. Through a gap in the robes above my head, I can see fluorescent lights passing by. Then we go through a doorway, and suddenly there are voices everywhere. Dozens of them, all talking in low, excited tones. I shift slightly, and the gap widens enough for me to see we're passing the main ceremonial hall, the same one where I first saw Father Neville this morning. There are people everywhere in white robes now, not the beige ones the staff wears, and they're arranging chairs in rows facing a raised platform at the front. Someone is hanging a banner across the back wall, and my stomach drops when I see what it says in gold letters 3 feet high. Welcome home, chosen son. Below the words are photos I recognize from Father Neville's office, my parents in their ceremonial robes standing at an altar with their hands raised. My mother is pregnant in the photo, and my father has his arm around her waist, both of them smiling like they know something wonderful that no one else understands. The cart keeps moving and we pass out of the ceremonial hall into another corridor, this one darker and cooler. The person pushing the cart is still humming, and I hold my breath, trying not to move even though my leg is cramping and the robes are suffocating me. Then the cart stops and I hear a voice I recognize, Cassie's voice, and she's so close I could reach out and touch her shoes if I wanted to. She says something about needing more ceremonial wine from storage and asking if anyone has seen the keys to the wine cellar. The person pushing my cart says they think the keys are in Father Neville's office, and Cassie sighs and her footsteps fade away in the opposite direction. I wait until I can't hear her anymore, counting to 60 twice just to be sure. Then I slowly push the robes aside and peek out. The hallway is empty now, and the person who was pushing the cart is gone. Probably went to help with something else. I climb out carefully, my legs stiff from being folded up in the cart, and I look around to get my bearings. I'm near what looks like a loading dock area with concrete floors and metal shelving units stacked with supplies. There's a door at the far end with a push-bar exit and a red sign warning that opening it will trigger an alarm. But when I get closer, I see the alarm box mounted above the door has been painted over multiple times, and there are wires hanging loose from the bottom. It looks like it hasn't worked in years, like they just left the sign up to scare people from trying. My phone is gone. They must have taken it when they tasered me and searched my pockets, but I spot a landline phone mounted on the wall near the loading dock. I pick up the receiver and my hands are shaking, so bad I can barely hold it steady enough to dial. 911. 3 numbers that should be simple, but my fingers keep slipping on the buttons. The call connects and I hear a click. Then a woman's voice starts to say something about emergency services, but after maybe 3 seconds, the line goes completely dead. Not like she hung up, more like someone cut the connection from somewhere else in the building. They must monitor the phones, or maybe someone saw me on a camera and killed the line before I could say anything useful. I hang up the receiver and stare at the exit door, my heart pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. This is it. Either the alarm works and they'll catch me in seconds, or it doesn't, and I might actually make it out of here. I push the bar and the door swings open and I wait for sirens or bells or anything, but there's just the sound of the door hinges creaking, and then I'm standing on a concrete loading area with 2 trucks parked nearby. The night air hits my face and it's so cold and clean after being in that basement that I just stand there for a second, breathing it in, filling my lungs with it like I can wash away the smell of bleach and fear. Then I hear voices behind me, men's voices, and I don't wait to see who they are or what they want. I run. The fence is about 50 yards away across an open area of gravel and dead grass, and I sprint toward it expecting to hear shouts or gunshots or the sound of people chasing me, but the voices behind me are fading instead of getting closer. Maybe they haven't seen me yet, or maybe they're not even looking for me, but I don't slow down to find out. When I reach the fence, I grab the chain link and start to climb, but then I see it. A drainage culvert running underneath the fence, just barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through if they didn't mind getting dirty. I drop to my knees and peer into the culvert, and it's dark, and I can't see the other end. But I hear water trickling somewhere inside, and I smell mud and rust. I get down on my stomach and start to crawl. The concrete scrapes my arms raw, and the water is so cold it makes my chest hurt, but I keep pushing forward with my elbows and dragging my legs behind me. I can't see anything ahead except darkness, and I have to trust that this culvert actually goes somewhere, and isn't just a dead end that will trap me. My hands are bleeding from the rough concrete, and I can feel the warm blood mixing with the cold water, and every few feet I have to stop and catch my breath because the space is so tight, I can barely fill my lungs. Something brushes against my leg in the water, and I bite down on my tongue to keep from screaming, just keep moving forward, and then I see moonlight ahead and I'm crawling faster, scraping my knees and elbows but not caring anymore. I pull myself out the other side and collapse on the ground for a second, soaking wet and shaking so hard my teeth are chattering. The fence is behind me now, and I can see the compound buildings in the distance with their lights on. But I'm on the outside, and that's all that matters. I force myself to stand up even though my legs feel like they might give out, and I look around trying to figure out which direction to go. Trees everywhere, no roads visible, no houses or lights except the compound. I pick the direction that seems darkest, away from those buildings, and I start walking. The moon is bright enough that I can see where I'm stepping, and I use it to keep myself going in a straight line away from the fence. Every few minutes I stop and listen for sounds of people chasing me, dogs barking, anything, but there's just crickets and my own breathing. My wet clothes are freezing against my skin, and I'm leaving a trail of water behind me. But I can't think about that now. I just have to keep moving. The woods seem to go on forever, and my sense of time is completely gone. It could be 10 minutes or an hour, but eventually I see a break in the trees ahead. I slow down and approach carefully, and it's a dirt road, just 2 tire tracks through the grass. I stand at the edge of the trees trying to decide which way to go when I see headlights in the distance getting closer. My first thought is to run out and flag them down, but then I remember Cassie counting those bills and Father standing there talking about completing the bloodline, and I realize I have no idea who might be driving. I step back into the trees and crouch down behind some bushes, watching as an old sedan drives past slowly. It's too dark to see who's inside, and the car doesn't stop, just keeps going down the road until the taillights disappear. I wait another few minutes to make sure it's really gone. Then I step back onto the road and follow it in the direction the car came from, figuring that way must lead somewhere. My feet are numb in my wet shoes, and every step feels like I'm walking on broken glass, but I keep going because what else can I do? The road curves through more trees, and then I see lights up ahead. Bright white lights that have to be a building. As I get closer, I can make out a gas station, one of those old ones with just 2 pumps and a small store, and there's a payphone mounted on the wall outside. I practically run the last 100 yards and grab the phone, my hands shaking so bad I can barely hold the receiver. I dial my aunt's number and it rings 4 times before going to voicemail, and I hear her voice asking me to leave a message. I'm trying not to cry, but my voice breaks anyway as I tell her where I am, that I escaped from the compound, that Father recognized me and showed me photos of my parents, and they're the ones who founded this whole thing. I tell her the date, November 18th, just like 1998, and that they were going to make me ascend tonight, and I need her to come get me right now. I hang up and just stand there for a minute, my forehead pressed against the cold metal of the phone, trying to stop shaking. There's a curb in front of the gas station, and I walk over and sit down on it, pulling my knees up to my chest. A truck pulls in a few minutes later, and the driver gets out to pump gas, and he looks over at me sitting there. He walks over and asks if I'm okay, and I tell him I'm just waiting for someone to pick me up. He looks at my hands, which are still bleeding, and my clothes, which are torn and muddy and wet, and I can see him trying to decide if he should push it, but he just nods and says, okay, then goes inside to pay. The gas station clerk is visible through the window, and I make eye contact with him, just so someone knows I'm here. He comes outside a minute later and asks if I need to use the bathroom or anything, and I say yes. He lets me in and points to the bathroom in the back, and I lock myself inside and turn on the sink. The water runs brown at first from all the dirt on my hands, then pink from the blood, and I scrub them as clean as I can with the harsh soap from the dispenser. When I look up at the mirror, I barely recognize myself. There are bruises on my neck where they pressed the taser, dark purple marks that look like fingerprints. My arms are covered in scrapes and cuts from the culvert, and my face is so pale I look sick. But it's my eyes that scare me the most. They have this empty look like something inside me broke and I don't know how to fix it. I dry my hands on paper towels and go back outside, and my phone starts ringing, except I don't have my phone. They took it. Then I realize it's the payphone, and I run over and grab it. My aunt is crying on the other end, asking where exactly I am and if I'm safe, and I tell her the name of the gas station that I saw on the sign. She says she's coming right now. Don't go anywhere. Stay where people can see me, and if anyone from the compound shows up, I need to call the police immediately. I promise her I will, and she says she'll be there as fast as she can, and then she hangs up. I go back inside the gas station, and the clerk is behind the counter, and I ask him if I can buy something. I check the pockets of the maintenance jacket I'm still wearing, and find a few crumpled dollar bills, enough for a bottle of water and a pack of crackers. I take them to the counter, and the clerk rings them up without asking any questions, and I go back outside and sit on the curb where he can see me through the window. I open the water and drink half of it in one go, then force myself to eat the crackers even though my stomach feels like it's tied in knots. Every car that pulls into the gas station makes my heart start racing, but it's just normal people getting gas or buying coffee, nobody from the compound. I keep watching the road, waiting for my aunt's car, and the minutes feel like hours. Finally, I see her old Honda coming down the road, and I stand up, and as soon as she pulls into the parking lot, I'm walking toward her. She gets out and grabs me and hugs me so tight I can barely breathe, and she's crying and asking if I'm hurt, checking my face and my arms. I just keep saying the same thing over and over, that they killed my parents, that they were going to kill me too, and she holds me and says, I'm safe now. She's got me. She helps me into the passenger seat and gets back behind the wheel, and instead of driving toward her house, she heads in the opposite direction. I ask where we're going, and she says we need to document everything right now while it's fresh, so she's taking me to an urgent care place she knows. We drive for maybe 20 minutes, and she keeps one hand on my shoulder the whole time, like she's making sure I'm really there. The urgent care is in a strip mall, and there's only one other person in the waiting room when we walk in. My aunt talks to the receptionist and explains what happened, using words like assault and kidnapping, and they take us back to an exam room right away. The doctor who comes in is a woman maybe in her 40s, and she asks me to describe what happened while she examines me. I tell her about the taser, and she takes photos of the burns on my neck. Then she looks at the scrapes on my arms and takes more photos. She asks about the bruises on my wrists, and I tell her about the guards grabbing me, and she documents those too. She's very gentle and professional about it, explaining what she's doing before she does it, and she gives me a form to sign saying I consent to her sharing these photos with law enforcement if needed. My aunt is sitting in the corner watching all of this, and I can see her hands are shaking just like mine. The doctor finishes writing her notes and looks up at me, her expression serious but kind. She asks if I want to file a police report about what happened, and I say yes before she even finishes the question. My aunt pulls out her phone right away and calls the non-emergency line, explaining the situation to whoever answers while the doctor steps out to give us privacy. The waiting room feels too bright and too quiet, and I keep staring at the clock on the wall, watching the minutes pass. About 25 minutes later, a man in plain clothes walks through the door and introduces himself as Detective Alexander Clark. He's maybe 40 with gray at his temples and tired eyes, and he shakes my hand gently like he knows I'm hurt. The doctor comes back in with her file and shows him the photos she took of my injuries, pointing out the taser burns and the bruises and the scrapes. Detective Clark takes out a small recording device and asks if it's okay to record my statement, and I nod, and he sets it on the exam table between us. I start from the beginning and tell him everything. I explain how Cassie threatened to break up with me if I didn't go to the compound, how she'd been crying and saying she'd hurt herself if I didn't at least try one service. I describe walking into the prayer hall and Father recognizing me immediately, calling me by my father's name. I tell him about the office underground with no windows and the electronic lock clicking shut behind me, about the photos of my parents in ceremonial robes and the newspaper clippings about the mass suicide in 1998. Detective Clark's pen moves across his notepad in quick strokes, and his expression gets more serious with every detail I give him. I describe seeing my name on the original list of people who were supposed to die with my parents, how I was only 7 years old, and my aunt had me that weekend by accident. I tell him about Father saying tonight's alignment matched 1998 exactly, that it only happens every 26 years, and they'd been looking for me ever since. My voice cracks when I describe the guards grabbing me and the taser hitting my neck, how my whole body went stiff and I couldn't fight back. I tell him about watching Cassie count the money Father handed her, how she called me a loser and said 3 years of dating me better be worth it. Detective Clark stops writing and looks at me, and I can see something shift in his face. He asks specific questions about the basement room, and I describe the concrete walls, the camera in the corner, the electronic lock with no inside handle. I tell him about Kira coming in with pills to sedate me, how I hid them under my tongue and pretended to swallow. I describe the PA system announcing the ceremony at 2 in the morning, the schedule clipboard on the wall, the fake seizure I staged to grab the guard's key card. I explain crawling through the laundry cart and sneaking out through the loading dock, squeezing under the fence through the drainage pipe. My aunt puts her hand on my shoulder while I talk about walking through the woods for 20 minutes and finally finding the gas station, calling her from the payphone. Detective Clark records everything and asks me to repeat certain parts, making sure he has the timeline right and the names of everyone involved. When I finish, Detective Clark sets down his pen and explains some things that make my stomach drop. He says the 1998 case was officially closed because everyone who died signed consent forms beforehand and left video testimonies saying they wanted to do it. The DA at the time ruled it was voluntary religious practice, and the investigation ended there, even though 67 people died, including my parents. But he says kidnapping and assault are completely different charges that have nothing to do with religious freedom. The fact that I was held against my will and tasered gives them solid grounds to investigate, and the taser burns on my neck prove force was used. He admits that prosecuting a religious organization is complicated because they have First Amendment protections and expensive lawyers who know how to use them. But he says unlawful imprisonment is unlawful imprisonment no matter what kind of building it happens in, and assault is assault, even if the person doing it wears a robe and calls themselves a priest. Right before we leave the urgent care, I remember something and reach into the pocket of the maintenance jacket I'm still wearing. The key card is there, slightly bent but intact, and I pull it out and hand it to Detective Clark. He takes it carefully and asks where I got it, and I explain about grabbing it off the guard's belt during the fake seizure. He pulls out a plastic evidence bag from his jacket and seals the key card inside, writing something on the label with a marker. He says this is important because it proves the doors were electronically locked, and I needed special access to get out, which supports my claim about being held prisoner. He explains that electronic locks keep records of when they're used and who used them, so if they can get access to the compound's security system, they might be able to show exactly when I was locked in and when I escaped. My aunt asks how long it will take to get that information, and Detective Clark says he needs to get a warrant first, which requires convincing a judge there's probable cause to search the property. My aunt drives me to her house and I feel like I'm moving through water, everything slow and muffled. She sets me up in her guest room with clean clothes and tells me to try to sleep, that I'm safe now and she's right down the hall. I lie down on the bed and close my eyes, but sleep comes in broken pieces, maybe 3 hours total. The nightmares wake me up over and over, images of my parents drinking from communion cups and falling to the ground, Father standing over them with that calm expression while bodies pile up around him. I see myself as a 7-year-old kid holding a cup, my mother's hand guiding it toward my mouth, and I wake up gasping and covered in sweat. After the 4th time, I give up on sleeping and just lie there staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows from the window blinds move across the walls. I keep telling myself I'm actually safe, that I'm at my aunt's house and not in that basement room, but my body doesn't believe it yet. Every sound makes me tense up. Every car passing outside makes me think they've found me. The next morning, my phone rings and I see Detective Clark's number on the screen. I answer, and he tells me they did a welfare check at the compound last night, went out there with 2 officers and knocked on the door. Father answered and acted completely cooperative, said he'd be happy to show them around. Detective Clark says Father denied holding anyone against their will and claimed I was a willing participant who attended one service and then left on my own. He showed them the guest rooms upstairs where visitors stay and said I must have gotten confused about the basement, that it's just storage and maintenance areas that guests don't normally access. Without a warrant, they couldn't search the basement or demand to see security footage, so they had to take his word for it and leave. My hands start shaking again hearing this, and I feel like I'm going to throw up. Detective Clark's voice stays calm, and he says he knows Father is lying, that my injuries and the keycard prove something happened. He's working on getting a warrant, but he needs more evidence to convince a judge, especially since the compound already has lawyers calling the police station claiming religious persecution. My aunt makes me eat breakfast even though I have zero appetite, and everything tastes like cardboard. I'm forcing down toast when my phone buzzes with a text from a number I don't recognize. I open it and see it's from Kira, the medic from the compound. My first thought is that it's a trap, but then I see what she sent and my whole body goes cold. It's a photo of the clipboard that was hanging in my room, the one with the ceremony schedule printed on it. 2 a.m., celestial alignment ceremony, bloodline completion, my name written at the bottom. She's also sent a list of everyone who was on duty that night, including the security guards who grabbed me in her own name with her role as medical supervisor. There's a message with the photos saying she's sorry and she should have helped me sooner, that she can't be part of this anymore. I forward everything to Detective Clark immediately without even thinking about it, just hit forward and send. He calls me back within an hour, and I can hear the change in his voice like he's trying not to sound too excited. He says this is exactly what he needed, documentation from inside the compound showing I was scheduled for some kind of ceremony against my will. The list of staff members gives him specific people to interview and potentially charge, and Kira's testimony as someone who was actually there that night will carry a lot of weight. He asks if I know where Kira is now, and I tell him I have no idea, just this phone number. He says he'll reach out to her and see if she's willing to give an official statement, and he thanks me for forwarding the photos so quickly. 2 days later, Detective Clark calls again with more good news. He got security footage from the gas station where I called my aunt, the one with the payphone outside. The footage shows me walking up to the station at 3 a.m, clearly injured and moving like I'm in pain. My clothes are torn and dirty from crawling through the drainage pipe, and you can see the burns on my neck even in the grainy video. The timestamp proves I was there at the exact time I said I was, and my condition in the video matches everything I described about escaping from the compound. Detective Clark says this footage combined with the medical photos and Kira's documentation gives him enough evidence to take to a judge and request a warrant to search the compound's basement and seize their security system records. That same afternoon, my phone starts buzzing with calls from numbers I don't recognize. I let the first few go to voicemail, and when I finally listen to them, it's Cassie's voice on every single one, sometimes crying and apologizing, sometimes angry and accusing. She says I'm being dramatic and ruining everything over a misunderstanding. She says Father Neville was just trying to help me connect with my spiritual heritage, and I should be grateful instead of going to the police like some kind of traitor. The next voicemail swings back to apologetic, her voice soft and broken, saying she made mistakes, but she really did love me, and can't we just talk about this like adults? Then another number calls, and this time she's threatening, saying I better think carefully about what my parents would want and how I'm destroying their legacy by fighting against the church they built. I save every single message without deleting any of them, my hands shaking as I listen to her voice change from sweet to vicious and back again. The texts start coming too, from different area codes, all the same pattern of apologizing, then blaming, then threatening. One says Father Neville is just trying to fulfill my destiny, and I'm being selfish. Another says I owe it to my parents' memory to at least hear them out. A third says if I really understood what they were offering me, I'd be begging to come back. I screenshot every text message and forward the whole batch to Detective Clark, along with the voicemail recordings. He calls me back within 20 minutes, and I can hear something satisfied in his voice when he tells me Cassie's communications are making his case stronger. He explains that her messages show what's called consciousness of guilt, meaning she knows what happened was wrong, and she's trying to manipulate me into not cooperating with the investigation. He says he's building charges for kidnapping, false imprisonment, and assault, and every message she sends adds to the evidence that this wasn't some voluntary religious experience like Father Neville claims. I ask if she's in trouble, and he says absolutely. She's facing serious charges as an accomplice, and her attempts to contact me are violations that he's documenting carefully. A week crawls by with me barely sleeping and jumping at every sound outside my aunt's house. Detective Clark calls on a Thursday morning to tell me he got the warrant approved. He's taking a team to search the compound's basement that afternoon, seize all their security footage, and interview staff members under oath. He wants me to know in case anyone from the compound tries to contact me or show up, and he tells me to call 911 immediately if that happens. I spend the rest of the day pacing around my aunt's living room, checking my phone constantly for updates. Around 6 that evening, Detective Clark calls again, and his voice sounds different, harder and more official. The search turned up everything, he says. They found the exact room where I was held, still set up the same way with the thin mattress and the medical cart. The camera footage was all saved on their security system, and it shows me being dragged down the hallway by the 2 guards, clearly unconscious or barely conscious, then locked inside. The timestamp matches everything I told him down to the minute. They also found the taser that was used on me in a security office, and the forensic team is testing it right now. But he says the residue on the contacts is going to match the burns on my neck. He found the clipboard too, the one with the ceremony schedule printed on it, still hanging on the wall where Kira photographed it. Everything I described is exactly where I said it would be, and the physical evidence backs up my entire account of what happened that night. The next day, Father Neville holds a press conference and I watch it on the local news website, my stomach turning as he stands at a podium with congregation members lined up behind him. He calls the investigation religious persecution and government overreach. He says I'm a troubled young man with mental health issues who's lying about my experience because I couldn't handle the spiritual intensity of their practices. He holds up copies of the 1998 consent forms, waving them at the cameras, saying everything his church does is completely legal and voluntary, protected by the First Amendment. He shows my parents' signatures and video testimonies, claiming they were devoted believers who chose transcendence willingly. Several congregation members nod along behind him, their faces serious and concerned, and one woman even speaks up to say I seemed confused and unstable when I visited, like I was on drugs or having some kind of breakdown. I have to close the video because I feel like I'm going to be sick watching him twist everything into lies. But that same week, Kira walks into the police station and gives a sworn statement to Detective Clark describing exactly what happened. She tells him about the forced sedation plan, how they were supposed to drug me before the ceremony. She describes the schedule in detail, the 2 a.m. timing, Father Neville's specific instructions to keep me contained in that room no matter what. She admits she was part of it, that she knew it was wrong, and she can't be part of the compound anymore after seeing what they were willing to do. Detective Clark calls to tell me she's quitting her job there and moving in with a friend 2 towns over because she's afraid of retaliation. Her testimony is huge, he says, because she's an inside witness who can confirm everything from the compound's perspective, and juries trust medical professionals who come forward even when it hurts them legally. 3 weeks after my escape, Detective Clark arrests the 2 security guards who grabbed me and tasered me that day. He charges them with assault and unlawful imprisonment, and one of them immediately lawyers up and refuses to talk. But the other one starts cooperating within hours of being booked. He tells Detective Clark that Father Neville gave them direct orders to use whatever force was necessary to keep me in the basement until the ceremony. He describes how Father Neville said my bloodline was too important to lose, and they couldn't let me leave under any circumstances. The guard even admits he felt uncomfortable about it, but Father Neville told him it was God's will, and he'd be protected legally. Detective Clark says this guard's testimony is critical, because it establishes that Father Neville personally ordered my detention, and knew I was being held against my will. Around the same time, Cassie completely disappears. Her phone number stops working, and when Detective Clark sends officers to her apartment, it's been cleared out with no forwarding address. He puts out a warrant for her as a material witness, meaning she's required to testify about her role in bringing me to the compound. Her last known location was the compound itself, but when investigators ask Father Neville about her, he claims he hasn't seen her since the night I escaped and has no idea where she went. Detective Clark tells me she's probably hiding because she knows she's facing serious criminal charges, and fleeing makes her look even more guilty. I start seeing a therapist who specializes in trauma and cult recovery. My aunt found her through a referral service, and the first session I just sit in her office crying for 40 minutes straight, unable to even form sentences about what happened. She doesn't push me, just lets me cry and tells me there's no timeline for processing this kind of betrayal and terror. The second session I managed to talk about my parents and how I don't know if I'm angry at them or sad for them or both. The third session we start working on separating my parents' choices from my own identity, and she helps me understand that their beliefs don't define who I am or what my life has to mean. It's slow going and every session leaves me exhausted, but I'm starting to feel like maybe I can actually work through this, instead of just being trapped in it forever. My aunt helps me install better locks on all the doors and windows at her house, the kind that need keys from both sides so nobody can break the glass and reach through. We add motion sensor lights in the yard and a security camera pointed at the driveway. I file for a restraining order against Father Neville and the compound, and the judge approves it immediately based on the evidence Detective Clark provides. The order says they have to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my aunt's house, and anywhere I work or regularly visit. Detective Clark tells me the criminal case is still building, and it might take months before it goes to trial, but he's confident they have enough evidence for convictions on multiple charges. He says to be patient, that justice in cases like this takes time, but everything is moving in the right direction. About a week later, Nicole Gomez published her article in the city newspaper with the headline, Church of Eternal Ascension, A Legacy of Control. She interviewed 3 former members who described years of manipulation and isolation, and she included copies of internal documents showing how Father recruited vulnerable people through their relationships. Some readers called it sensationalism and said she was attacking religious freedom, but within days, 2 more former members contacted her with their own stories about being pressured to cut off their families and donate everything they owned. One woman said she escaped 5 years ago and had been too scared to speak up until she read about my case. Detective Clark told me these new testimonies were helping build a pattern that would make prosecution easier, and the DA was now considering additional charges of fraud and coercion against the compound's leadership. 2 months after my escape, I drove out to the lake where that photo was taken, the one showing my parents baptizing followers in the water. I parked on the gravel road and walked down to the shore, my shoes sinking slightly in the mud. The lake was calm and gray under cloudy skies, and I stood there for maybe 20 minutes just looking at the water and thinking about the bloodline Father kept talking about. This special gift, he said, ran through my family. My parents believed they could speak to something eternal, and Father tried to force that same destiny onto me, like I was just a piece in some plan they started 26 years ago. But standing there at the water's edge, I realized I'm not my parents' legacy, or Father's chosen heir, or anyone's destiny. I'm just myself, and that's enough.